Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the TINHIFI ELF. This is the latest budget entry from TINHIFI this time around, and following what is already a kind of a philosophy for them. They're using a bullet style shape for the IEM itself. It's available in two versions, one with a fixed cable and one with a removable cable, which is the case of this one here. They've brought us an IEM that, although being in the budget segment, I mean $18, so sub $20, although being in a budget segment, it has got a very interesting tune, and that was the one reason why I actually selected IEMs which are way more expensive than the ELF, to kind of not compare but to set a stage for you guys to understand the sound of the ELF. Anyway, this is the box. It's as basic as can possibly be. Let me try and see if I can open this up. Okay, there we go. It seems to be coming out. There we go. As can be expected, obviously the accessories which come with the ELF are very basic. Brings tips, this removable ear hook that you can put on the cable, and then this cable. And honestly, this cable is a mess, because when I tried to measure the IEM, not only was it giving me some really weird measurements in the lower frequencies, but then sonically as well, it was holding back significantly the ELF. And I ended up trying out some other cables. Some of the first cables that I actually tried out was some equally cheap cables that come with KZs and with TRN, and they already were better than this cable, which as well, in terms of having a very much a life of its own, it's got. And then I opted for this IVPIQ cable, copper and graphene combination. And fair enough, yes, the cable is significantly more expensive than the IEM. But cable is definitely a thing that I think TINHIFI should address. This cable definitely is not doing its well intended job, I guess is the best way I can put it. All right. Anyway, let me just put this away here. Over there. Pack this away. And pack this away. Alright, there we go. As for some of the characteristics, you can have a look there. 105 dB sensitivity, 32 ohms. The driver used is a 10mm PU and titanium, and that explains as well a lot of the high frequency which the ELF has. The shell also has another interesting detail, which is it's an open back shell, as you can see there. Open back. This open back, I will actually end up considering it more of a semi-open back, because the pores are so small that I don't know. I have a hard time grasping, fully the concept of open back. The IEM, obviously being a bullet style, has got some fit issues. If it fits or it doesn't fit, you're gonna have to really try and ram this as deep as possible. In my case, instead of fitting like this, I have to put them going upwards so that I can reach the canal and stay put, basically. Otherwise, the shells are nicely built. It's not a heavy. There's really nothing to that can be pointed as a negative aspect. Okay, as I said, the cable is an IVPIQ cable, and hardware wise, that's it. I've brought out the following IEMs, Simgot EW100 and the Tanchjim 1, because they are, for me personally, the references at under $100. Sorry, at under $20. The Simgot being the reference if you are looking for a more detailed, a cleaner, a more technically focused set. The Tanchjim, if you are looking for a set which is equally technically focused, although maybe not as good as the EW, but has got just that little extra mid-bass bump, which confers music a more engaging feel, a more satisfying interaction. Okay. On this side, another TINHIFI, the C2. Next to it, the BGVP P05, and then the EPZ Q5. The C2 is to a certain extent a reference as well at around $30 price point. Yes, significantly more expensive than the ELF. I mean, if it's the fixed cable one, you can buy two ELFs for the money of the C2. The BGVP, the PO5 is about $40, so yet still a little bit more expensive than the tin, and obviously more expensive than the ELF. And then finally here, one of the IMs which I consider as well to be a rec in the under $50 or up to $50, which is the Q5 from EPZ. Very much an IM which has the kind of sound that you find in the likes of, for example, a Wizard HE10 or a Simgot EA500, which are again way more expensive. Now, what the ELF, the EPZ, the BGVP, and the Simgot have in common is graphically they are almost identical. Okay, almost identical, even to a certain extent as well. The C2, I could say. The one that stands out slightly is the Tanchjim, the one. So how can I characterize the sound? Very easy. The sound of the ELF is a very detailed, very open sound. It's got just enough amount of bass to match the mids and the highs, but it's definitely an IM that has been focused on the mids and highs. Vocals are what it's intended to do well. Male vocals and female vocals, although I think that the female vocals outshine slightly the male vocals because they don't require as much bass energy, but the bass that is there present doesn't hinder in any way any male vocal, mind you. In terms of instruments as well, nothing was played back in a negative manner. Guitars, wind instruments, any sort of percussion was fine. Really nothing that I can say or consider a fault when you take into account the price. Okay, the drums could have a little bit more of a hit to them, a little bit more weight, but honestly nothing that was offensive. And if you are one of the lucky ones that actually is able to deep fit the ELF, then you will see that apparent leanness of the bass becomes no longer apparent. It doesn't exist. Okay, so that's basically in terms of the frequency response. It's a nice IM focused on the mids and the highs. The highs are clean. They can get a little bit on the intense side when you start pushing the volume. So I would recommend a warmer sounding source. I actually used it with my NX7, but I use it mainly, and I really like the combination, mainly with the Truth Ears, the Shio, the DAC amp. I also used it with the Cayenne RU7, very nice, also worked very nicely. The Panon tail also worked very nicely. I found that if I went for the ESS powered stuff, then yes, things seem to be just overly bright. Just too much a little bit. But look, guys, this is me really nitpicking. The truth is, for the price that it costs, me trying to find faults is a little bit on the ridiculous side, because there are plenty of IMs at this value which do not even do half of what the ELF can do. Compared then here with the IMs that I selected, I mean, the EW is a reference, and the EW does have reference for me, and the EW does have more bass than the ELF. So ultimately you could consider the EW to be the more versatile, because it does have that little extra bass energy to give certain music genres that feel that we want. As compared to the Tanchjim one, it's very noticeable. This has got a nicer, a more warmer, more organic, more old school presentation, while this has got a more clinical presentation, almost sterile. Okay, these are strong words, but this is just for you to understand the difference. Compared to the C2, we have again very much the same situation as we had here with the EW100, although the treble here and the upper mids and treble here are more polished, so it just comes across in a nicer manner, with a nicer tonality. All right, the BGVP, the same situation again. Tonally very nice. It's got a nice, rich, warm sound. So again, nice, engaging sound that is conducive with the price that it has. And then finally, the Simgot. Once more, that emphasis on the upper mids and the highs, but done very tastefully. You know, these three, for me to say that they are better than the elf, yes, they, of course they are better. Are the differences huge? No, surprisingly no, the differences are not huge. What you do notice is that there's more finesse, there's more polish in these three as opposed to the elf. Everything comes across with in a more mature manner. Yes, obviously there's more bass in any one of them as compared to the elf. The texture of that bass is better. The mids have got a little bit more of a lush feeling to them, but it's more in the upper mids and treble that you see that this one is a little bit more unpolished, more brute force, while those ones have got a certain amount of finesse to do that. As compared here to the EW100 and the Tanchjim, the one. I mean, it's not a better IEM. It's just focused to a different crowd of people. So if you have these two and you're happy with these two, the elf doesn't really make sense. If you are in the market of buying, I mean, I would obviously suggest, like I always do, go listen to it first. See if it meets your requirements, and then decide. Obviously the price is like I said, low. You can buy the fixed cable one if you decide, even for $13, and I mean that's really not much money considering what you are getting. Technically, which is the only aspect which I haven't mentioned, if this probably is the best technically here out of all the IEMs, this one that cannot match it. Yes, it's got good imaging, I'll give it that. The soundstage is relatively wide, but the height and the depth, there could be a little bit more sensation of air. Detail retrieval is very good, and resolution is very good. So you notice there's a step up in the technical capabilities when you go into this bunch here, which are the more expensive ones. Although, once again, and I'll repeat what I just said a second ago about the music listening side of it, and the normal listening conditions, you'll be quite impressed. The elf will surprise you. As compared to the technical capabilities of these two, which are then in the same price bracket, I would say that compared to the Tanchjim, maybe a little bit more cleanliness up top, obviously because that doesn't have as much bass. So then that cleanliness will give us just a little bit extra detail retrieval. Curiously, and I don't know why it is so, but the soundstage of the Tanchjim is better than the soundstage on the elf. Not a huge difference, but it is better. Imaging, I'll give it to the elf. Resolution, I'll give it to the one once again. So they kind of very much matching each other technically. As compared to the EW100, I find the EW100 more competent. The EW100 has got technicalities along the lines of the Q5 over there. So nice soundstage, it's got a nice sensation of air, of space, good detailed retrieval, good resolution, good imaging. So it's probably the better one technically out of this bunch and out of these three. And there you have it, guys. I mean, it's like I said, it's a nice bullet style IM, a nice budget offering. It's solid enough, and what happens here is what happens in the sub $30, the sub $50, the sub $100. The market has so many IMs that the differences, trust me, are not huge. The differences in the majority of the times are differences of 5, 6, 7% at the very most, and these differences even become tighter many times because of how the earphones then interact with your ears, how the anatomy of your ears is able to receive the IM and then allow it to be placed in a position which is the ideal. How many times have you heard people complain about the oxygen, for example, the Tanchjim, because of the fit that shell has? I mean, more recently now, I even told when I did my review, the Kailua from HBB, for me, an absolute mess of an IM to try and get to sit properly in my ear. So obviously my experience with it was not the same as a person that actually was able to sit the earphone properly in his ears. And even the Muse Hi-Fi, the East 6, the latest release from Muse, also has a beautiful shell, stunning shell, beautifully built, very nice, very along the philosophy of Muse, which is to be very out there in terms of the aesthetics. But the shape of the shell is, you know, a little bit on the weird side, and the angle of the nozzle, things which don't help. And that's it, guys. I'll just quickly show you now the graphs, and we'll wrap it up. Hi guys, welcome now to the graph section for the TINHIFI ELF. Let me just quickly do away with the majority of these graphs, although I think it's quite apparent straight away from the first glance that all the IMs that I selected for this review are very similar. They all have this kind of harmony style of tune. The biggest surprise honestly for me for the ELF was the fact that, and let me just put now the ELF by itself, was that although it showcases a graph which would lead you to believe that it's got lots of air and so on, it does, but I feel that it's more of an air which is kind of false, if I'm able to try and convey better what I'm trying to say. It's more of a false sensation of air in space than realistically being that air in space. As you can see, very lean bass, no bleed, nothing, and then a pretty significant pin again. We're talking about going from 68 to 77, so 9 dBs of pin again. So an emphasis definitely on the vocals, on the mids, upper mids and treble. But nothing really that I can consider, oh no, it gets aggressive, it gets too much. No, it's actually quite well done. That's the reality. As compared then to, well, I'll show you the first two cheaper ones, the Simgot and the Tanchjim. As compared to the Simgot, very much similar over here, not really much of a difference. More bass, and this is noticeable. You do notice the Simgot does have more bass. It's fuller, it's more evened out. You see this difference here. One is over there at 73, the other one is there at 77. So you got a 4 dB difference here. While on the Simgot, okay, we have basically no difference. We're talking about a 76, 77, so 1 dB difference roughly. So the sound comes across as more balanced, more full, more lush, more old school almost. If I want to make a radical difference here between this and the ELF. The Simgot does have that sensation of air that I'm talking about. It's not as fake, let's put it that way, as on the ELF. So that's the the Simgot. The next one I'm going to show you is the Tanchjim, the one. Definitely more bass, very noticeable. Some might say, oh, but it's bleeding now into the mids and it's spoiling everything. Honestly, no. I don't consider it that way. As for the mids, upper mids and treble, as you can see, very similar. And then it's got a good amount of extension as well, past 10K. Nice soundstage, nice feeling of soundstage. Perhaps ultimately, yes, even significantly better than the ELF, but it's the imaging rather that I think, and the detailed retrieval that are the most important ones here. They're trading blows, the ELF taking more times the win in terms of the detailed retrieval, in terms of the timbre and the tonality. The Tanchjim, it takes the win more often because of that extra bass conferring then the necessary harmonics needed to give instruments and certain instruments their life that they lack if it's a way too thin presentation. As compared now to the more expensive IMs that I brought out, the BGVP, again you can see very similar here in the way that it's doing the mids and upper mids and treble, and then significantly more bass. Ultimately it's just a more finesse, more mature, more polished presentation up there, with obviously the complement of the bass down here. All right. Very much the same situation happens with the EPZ, the Q5. Let me just change the color of this so you can see it better. Let me make it black. No, not black. No, let me make it blue so it stands out nicely. So as compared to the Q5, definitely more bass, no doubt about it. The rest, as you can see, very similar, actually very equal. It's just again that you notice that in the EPZ things come across with more with that extra little bit of finesse, of polish, and a lot of it honestly is down to that fact that the bass on the ELF is a little bit on the lean side. And then finally the TINHIFI, the C2, which once again shares very much the same style of graph. It's got a smidge more bass, although it's not a huge difference, but it's enough to notice that it's got a little bit extra to confer then the male, the female, the instruments, the necessary dynamics, the necessary completeness to them, for them to actually sound as correct as possible. In terms of the technicalities that the C2 does have some really capable technicalities. I mean, compared to the ELF, it is better, in my opinion. Definitely, in terms of the soundstage, you do feel that sensation of space being realistic and not so fake. All right. Anyway, guys, this is my take on the ELF. Solid enough offering. Focused more for the mids, vocal centric, that kind of stuff will do well with it. If you like to listen to a lot of just instrumentals and so on, it will do pretty well, even though it's got this little handicap to a certain extent of the bass being a little bit on the lean side. But overall it's a nice IM. It is truly a nice IM. There's really nothing that I can say that is wrong with it. If obviously you own some of the IMs that I've mentioned, this doesn't make sense. It's pointless. It doesn't have anything that makes it stand out. And just like I was saying earlier, the market is so inundated with IEMs at the different price points, especially up to this bracket of $150. There's so many IEMs that the differences are minimal between them, and the choice and as a reviewer to actually convey the differences and it's very hard. It's very hard. It's not an easy job, not an easy task to undertake. As always, guys, like and subscribe. Any questions you have, please feel free to ask me, and I'll do my best to answer as quickly as possible. You take care now. Bye bye.